Otherwise I'd have to bring you down to earth too. I know this verse hurts you. I tell you what, I give you advice. I'm feeling nice. Your vices could influence your writing if you weren't biting.
Friends and relatives, welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. I am your host, MagMongoSlade, and on our most magical WrestleMania weekend, Bret the Hitman Hart decided to go full Bret the Hitman Hart and attack modern wrestling, and thus the Bret Hart is always right. That crowd, oh boy, are they taking a beating now. Bret the Hitman Hart says wrestling is too phony. Modern wrestling is too phony. We're going to get ready to the SMARK tiers, but first I got to tell you guys what Bret said that caused people so much trouble. Bret said, and I quote, "I really roll my eyes at how pathetic wrestling is today from top to bottom. All the top wrestlers and all the middle and bottom wrestlers in WWF and AEW all slapping their leg on every punch and every slap. It's like it's to the point now where I can't watch wrestling today. Sadly, it's getting too phony, and I really question the direction that the people that are in charge are taking wrestling. AEW kind of gone on a bad direction, I think, with all the violence and the gore. Dean Ambrose sticking a fork in someone's head for 5 minutes with a close-up on TV. This isn't wrestling either." And he says, quote, "It was embarrassing to sit in the front row and watch all the kids in the audience slap their leg as the wrestlers slap their leg in these kick spots where they pretend to kick each other with shin pads and slap sounds over and over." He's talking about Clash at the Castle on September 22, by the way. He says, "To realize that the crowd is in on it. The entire floor is clapping and slapping their leg. I'm going, we used to try to make it real. What happened? Everybody is in on it. It's a big giant charade. I had a hard time feeling the fan part of me come to life. When I watched Dungeon Wrestling, and I'm watching this young girl, apparently her name is Zoe Sagler, just watching her take someone over in a headlock and having a real headlock on was so much more anything that I saw in Cardiff with the wrestlers over there. It goes back to simple art. Wrestling is an art form. All art is simple. Wrestling is a simple art that is really just storytelling or good versus evil most of the time anyway. And it's easy story to tell. Wrestlers have been doing it for decades, and wrestlers from 2005 up don't know anything about telling stories or what headlocks are. When I see wrestlers today just slapping and the crowd going woo and everyone keeps slapping one after another, these guys have welts all over their chest and blisters all over their chest, hurt that night, and they go, geez, I was an idiot tonight and somebody slap me on the chest as hard as they could 500 times and my chest is killing me. That's what they used to do to the jabronis back in the days. They would chop them, beat them, slap them. I would never let a guy slap me or chop me. Ric Flair is the only guy I ever let chop me. He usually got me in the end where I would tell Rick, you can give me one chop in the match to get it over with. But as far as the match goes, I'm not going to sit there and stick my chest out for some guy to slap me on the chest for an hour. That's not what wrestling is. It's not about hurting yourself. It's not about coming back to the dressing room and feeling everybody knows that it's not real, right? They all know what's going on. So why are you letting someone slap you and chop you and whip you across the chest and hurt you, and you're in pain all night, and you wake up the next day with blisters all over your chest, and then do it again the next night? It's just stupid. So apparently these are 2 separate quotes. But Bret wasn't done, because he made another comment that I think that people are upset about. And oh no, it must have been this. It was the same thing. Okay, it was the same thing. I had screenshotted it, but it's the same exact quote. All right. So Bret got everybody all upset, saying that wrestling is too phony. He was talking about Clash at the Castle, but he's also mentioned AEW and the fork situation, which was pretty recent. So Bret is not a fan. Let me say this. I too feel the same about the leg slapping. Randy Orton has mentioned this leg slapping. People have been saying this stuff for a long time with the leg slap. People have been talking about it for a while. And yes, there's a lot of WWE wrestlers who do the leg slap. Seth Rollins, Johnny Gargano, oh my God, the Usos with the super kicks. But he started talking about Walter and the chops. Now, let's talk about that for a moment, because I feel like that's an unfair situation. Also, I don't think Bret is wrong. He let Chris Benoit chop him too. Now, there's a lot of wrestlers who didn't like the chops. I know Raven said he didn't like chops because they hurt. And you have to actually make contact in order to get the noise. But then you see people, I think it was in NXT, where Johnny Gargano had a weak chop, but he slapped his thigh with the chop because he wasn't really going to chop. I think it was Velveteen Dream or something like that. It was a huge box spot that everybody saw. So he's not wrong in so much that wrestling does look very phony today. And that's one of the biggest critiques that most people have with wrestling today is how phony it looks. But we usually go to the extreme. A guy does a Canadian destroyer from the top rope and the other guy isn't dead. You know, the other guy doesn't at least stay down to sell it. That's kind of how we expect things to be. But Bret, being a guy who's a little bit more, old school, and the guy was born in like the 60s or the 40s or something like that, and was wrestling in the 80s and the early 90s, where things started to get a little bit over the top. But to the chops, I know he was in Calgary when the Dynamite Kid and himself were going kind of wild in their matches, and they're really hitting each other kind of hard. In Japan, they do the same thing. They hit each other very hard, and that's the Japanese influence on American wrestling is, guys like to make contact now. They actually want to go out there and chop. But the Mexican influence is, all the flying and people being bunched together, which is another thing that Bret Hart talked about. And we get it, that it's kind of frustrating for somebody like him to sit back and watch something like this. I get how it could be that way. And I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm saying that I see it too. A lot of it we ignore, but we agree. To be quite honest, I agree, I should say. I don't know about we. I don't know about you guys. But let's get it right into the tiers, because the tiers are what everybody's here for, right? You couldn't pay me to watch a Bret Hart match. Wrestling purists come after me, but shit is so boring. As opposed to foot stomping, man, some of these older wrestlers can't understand that wrestling evolved and changed. Added different styles. It's like boomers using notebooks and making fun of people using tablets. That's not quite the same thing. It's not, your body isn't different technology. All right. Plus, when everybody's doing it in wrestling, it does become far more obvious. The idea of evolving wrestling should make wrestling look more legitimate. Even if you were going to make contact, again, more contact has always been a part of the business. It's always been something, even in Bret Hart's day, there were people who made more contact in wrestling than other people. Some people like working a little stiff. Some people don't. It's a different ball game. The critiques that Bret Hart is putting forth is the fact that it's too phony. The fact that people can see through it, that people are in on it. And a part of the reason why people are in on it is because people keep pointing it out. Again, Randy Orton pointed out the leg slapping years ago. I remember he was making fun of NXT and making fun of AEW about all the leg slaps, and people were mad about it then. So at least some people are consistent that they don't like all the leg slapping, but some people who do. And I don't feel the need to defend modern wrestlers. I will just say that I think Bret Hart's, he's not 100% right, because people have been doing this for ages. And it's just now becoming, like he said, more visible, because as people do conversations and podcasts and stuff like that, people can now see through it. Wrestlers are giving away the secrets now, and that's very unfortunate. Somebody says, when the best in-ring wrestler of all time critiques modern wrestling, y'all opinions here don't matter. Oof. Look where no leg slapping got you, Bret. I guess he meant Goldberg kicking him in the head. But to Goldberg's point, Bret did bang his head on the floor. So maybe that might have been it too. He's blunt with it, and it comes off harsh, but it's spot on. Absolutely. Somebody says, I don't mind the slaps if it's done in a way that hides the slap. That's sort of the point. They need to hide it like blading. Some of that is definitely the camera work, but there is also far less psychology about the stories being told. Yeah, and he's 100% right. Somebody says, I agree, it's become very phony, in part because the companies have mostly given up on protecting the business. Absolutely. This gets a heart for me. At its core, the business isn't the same as Bret remembers. Back then, it was generally assumed that what the crowd was seeing was not just a performance. Yeah. Let's get to some people that are mad at Bret. Somebody says, Undertaker feels the same. Ask Rock what he thinks. There's a common thread amongst these guys about what they don't like, and the leftover fans hate to hear it. But there's a reason wrestling isn't as popular. Sucks, but he has a point. I think that people keep trying to find one magic bullet to why wrestling isn't as popular. Is sort of the wrong way to look at things. On this channel, I always bring up different things that could affect why wrestling isn't as popular as it used to be. Characters, access, the way the business is run, the kind of fans that wrestling attracts nowadays. There's a lot of different things that could be the reason. And I think it looking very phony is just one of those reasons, just one of many. I agree it's overdone. It's okay to do, but not 12 times a match and not 4 or 5 matches on the card. It's supposed to be believable. If you kick someone and make that type of sound that the leg slap does, after 2 kicks, the opponent should be down, his teeth knocked out, or lip bleeding. Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. Not just the leg slapping, but also all the ridiculous moves that require too much time and cooperation. Yeah, Bret talked a lot about that too. I couldn't find the quote on that, but he talked about that too. Bet he wished Goldberg would have slapped his leg. Oh no. Oh no. Don't say nothing like that. Here comes Disco Inferno. He's not wrong. The people rating the matches these days should be fired. Well, they're rating the matches based off the people that they like, not necessarily how the match actually is. We know that already. Bret's stuff always looked believable. That's the thing. Well, because he actually wanted to do some grappling stuff. You know, you very rarely see like really good grappling or charismatic wrestlers doing a lot of grappling. Usually a lot the grapple guys have no charisma whatsoever. And their matches are incredibly boring. Like, you know, Daniel Garcia. You know, I hate to throw him out there. He's just the first one that came to mind. But a lot of Graps dudes, they're just very boring. You know, they don't know how to do what they do and be entertaining while doing it. Bret just mad Goldberg actually kicked his head off instead of slapping his leg. Oof. I don't know what this says about me, but the older Bret Hart gets, the more I love him. We used to try to make it look real. What happened? No, you didn't. Yeah, he did. He tried to make it at least believable. You know, that's the thing. He tried to make it believable. You know, I mean, look, Bret is definitely the best there is, the best there was, etc., etc. But like, the man practically jumped in the air and stomped the mat with both feet when punching guys to simulate an impact sound. Sort of a bad take, I think. That's a good critique because Bret did do a lot of stomping. Him and Davey. Between him and the British Bulldog, the mat took more of a beating than any wrestler. But I think that was kind of the point. You know, and that was his point with the chops, is that, you know, you're not supposed to kill your opponent. But whatever. I love Bret, but he needs to understand wrestling has evolved since the 90s. Come on. Wrestling has evolved since the 90s. That's such a lame excuse. So what is if it's evolved? That doesn't mean it's good or just as good or even better. Just because something evolves doesn't mean it evolves to something better. Come on. Let's use your brain here. When Bret says it's always right. Yeah, I guess. Somebody's posting Grandpa Simpson yelling at the clouds, of course. I miss the old days where everybody would use a power driver and a sharpshooter. Yeah, everybody started using power drivers. It's kind of crazy. Bret is always right. Bret is never wrong. Shawn Michaels, what do you have to say about what Bret has to say? I don't know. Maybe Bret should watch a little bit more NXT. He'll probably be very upset about NXT. Very upset. This is quite frankly a shocking turn of events, as Bret Hart has quite always been a very positive and open-minded person about wrestling. This is why we only watched wrestling during the 90s and stopped watching after the Stone Cold Rock era. Guess what? Those guys did a lot of stomps too. They didn't do any leg slaps, but they did stomps. The leg slaps haven't come in yet. It's really crazy to think how many old heads think wrestling ever looked real. Well, I watch a lot of old matches. They did look real. They looked like guys that were in a fight, at least. You know, there was no obvious cooperation. There was not too many spots either. You know, of course, there are certain styles of wrestling that involve spots and, you know, that kind of stuff. But a lot of these guys when they were wrestling, you could at least get into the match as if it was a legitimate fight happening in front of your eyes. Okay. People will say dumb shit like this, but when Meiko Satomura injured Roxanne, y'all were up here talking about she's too dangerous. Pick a struggle. Literally, Bret is talking about both of those things. He's talking about the phoniness of the strikes. And he's also talking about excessive shoot strikes. Again, wrestling is supposed to be in the middle. You know, it's not supposed to be both. You're not supposed to throw a punch that looked like Fred Sanford threw the punch. If you've ever seen an episode of Sanford and Son when Fred Sanford threw a punch, I mean, he was like a mile away from a guy. You know, but it was TV and everybody knew it and nobody cared. They didn't care about it looking realistic. Nowadays, people want these things to look somewhat realistic. Otherwise, you know, everybody understands that wrestlers fight 400 times a week, and therefore what they're doing can't be real. Everybody knows that. Because, I mean, if you knew boxing existed, you knew pro wrestling couldn't exist. It couldn't be real. But ultimately, the sweet spot is somewhere in the middle, where maybe you make contact, but it's not you're trying to kill a guy. You know, you have to at least make contact to make it look legitimate, but you don't have to kill the guy just because you made contact. Just like, you know, you put a guy in a real wrist lock, but you don't really lock his joints up so he can't move his arm. You know, you put him in an ankle lock. He's supposed to feel it. It's supposed to be snug, but it ain't supposed to be like he's going to tap out, you know, 2 minutes into the match and the match is supposed to be 15 minutes. That ain't how this works. You know, the fact that wrestling fans don't get this, you know, just another reason why wrestling fans are dumbasses. And literally one of the people who talk so much about things they don't understand at all what they're watching. Bret Hart knows what he's talking about. You may like whatever style you desire, but from the excellence of execution, he's been in the ring and he knows the business inside and out. Modern wrestling has drastically changed directions from its original conception, good and bad. Well, that's trues. Mad cuz old. Bret Hart, mad cuz old. He's mad because he got old, you see. That's a complete, total critique of what he's saying. It says, was getting his head kicked off by Goldberg real enough for him? Maybe they should be doing that shit every week so Bret Hart can have something to watch that's not, quote, 2 phony leg slaps. Again, he didn't read it. They're just emoting all over the internet. The emotions. They're just in a glass case of emotions. They don't know what to do. Okay, Bret, normally I'm with you, but the bitching needs to stop. Wow. Unpopular opinion. I'm tired of this shit, and I never understood the hype. He was never that good to me. Maybe because I was always a Shawn guy. Owen was much better than Bret to me. Owen stomped a lot too. He was a stomper. A lot of those guys were stompers. You know, especially during, well, just about everybody stomped with like jabs and stuff, but there's a lot of stompers. A lot of stompers back in the day. Bret was just one of many stompers. There's a lot of that. A lot of that stomp stuff. I always thought Bret Hart was boring and overrated. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Oh, shit. Bret Hart is 100,000,000% correct. Wow. That's a lot of correct. Bret, don't be the Dave Mustaine of wrestling. Dave Mustaine? I'm pretty sure somebody in the comment section knows who that is. I have no idea. And to be quite honest, I don't think I need to know. Imagine not everyone wanting to go out there and get injured all the time. It's really pathetic. Again, didn't read the article. He didn't read it. He didn't read it. People who have been fetishizing Bret Hart for the last few years are about to turn so quick. Yeah, I expected that. Of course, we all expect a lot of these people to be completely and totally phony. I really liked Bret as a kid, but goddamn is Buddy bitter. Ooh, he's bitter. Ooh, he's bitter. You're bitter, Bret. Every time Bret Hart sees a thigh slap, he's reminded that he lost the title to a thigh slap. Tweet. Shawn was wearing pants, though, so you really couldn't hear it. Every time Bret talks, it's something negative about the wrestling business. Like, goddamn, bro, how can the GOAT be so unlikable? Wow. As usual, Bret Hart is right. So he says, I understand it's 2023 and most people are too stupid to be able to take 60 seconds to read an actual article. But everything Bret said in this story is 100% accurate, pal. Yeah, that is true. He is accurate. It is accurate. It's very accurate. The master has spoken. Too many of the self-entitled wrestlers today won't listen, and their fans are even worse. Their fans are even worse. Many people with in-ring experience giving nuance about this opinion on this app. Ugh, this nigga need a hug. Saying Bret Hart needs a hug. I'm pretty sure he gets many hugs from his young black wife. Go ahead, Hitman. Let's see. Where was leg slapping last month? I didn't see shit. You must not have watched TV, because I saw a lot of leg slapping. I see a lot of leg slapping on every wrestling show. I mean, it's to the point where I got to ignore it. Watching older wrestlers criticize the current generation is funny because the current generation is doing things in the ring that they couldn't do in their prime. Like, wrestler is not just arm drags and headlocks anymore. Get over it. How about we get some arm drags and headlocks, for fuck's sake? Like, why not a body slam or an atomic drop? Why is it always super kick, super kick, super kick, unrealistic power driver, unrealistic suplex, unrealistic, move from tiny guy to big guy, and then we all go home with hundreds of big moves stacked on top of each other. Maybe we ought to actually, put some work into what we do. We could use a mind like Bret's in today's world. We really need it. Yeah, I wish if only. I love Bret, but stop the bitching and the moaning and the disrespect. To call wrestling phony is beyond disrespectful to all the talent putting hard work in and putting their bodies on the line. But you talking to Bret Hart? What the fuck? What do you think he did for 30 years? What do you think he did for 30 years? He's been preaching safety for years now. He was bitching at Samoa Joe for injuring Tyson Kidd with the muscle buster and thinks that it's a shame that Samoa Joe continued to use the move. He lambasted Seth Rollins for breaking John Cena's nose, I think it was. And also for injuring Sting. Bret Hart's whole thing has been safety in the ring. But he also wants it to look good. You can do both. It's not an either or situation. You can do both. You can have a match that looks realistic where nobody gets hurt. You can do that. I'm sorry. I know that it's hard for people to take that critique, but for fuck's sake, let's be real here. Somebody says, yeah, well, maybe he should work on being relevant again instead of shitting on today's most popular stars. Why did he need relevance from people like you? You're literally a they-them account on Twitter. I mean, come on. A they-them account on Twitter is going to critique Bret the Hitman Hart on wrestling? Get the fuck out of here, all right? Beat it. Nobody cares like this kid. Everyone violating him for this, but if you read the article, he's talking about the audience doing it and him not liking that the audience is in on it. That is a good point. That is a lot of what he's saying is how the audience is in on it. He's also in England, and England is one of those places where they have the super smarkiest of fans. Super, super, super smarky fans. That's how you end up getting What Culture and every British YouTube wrestling fan who is an absolute, goddamn cancer on the wrestling business. Here's somebody. Those two paragraphs quoted are literally the opposite of each other. Why aren't they making it look real? Everyone is in on it. Followed by, it's too real. You should come back to the dressing room fine as if we all know it's not real. And his memory of chops is wrong too. What he's saying is there is what he's trying to get around to is that there's a happy medium to be had here. Where you don't go out there and kill each other, but that you're not so fake that the audience can see through it. I don't understand how you can't find what he's saying in this conversation, right? You should be able to see that. What he's saying is that it's so phony that the audience can see through it. It's so fake that the audience is in on it and mocking the boys for doing it. That's what he's saying. Yeah. Of course the audience is in on it. Why is it such an issue for a community to come together and join in on something that they enjoy? This is so weird. Oh my God. This is the weirdest wrestling fans. We all come together to mock wrestling, guys. We all love it, so we come here to mock it. That's why we're okay with guys wrestling in slow motion, stabbing each other in the head with forks, dildos, guys wrestling naked, guys stabbing each other in the dicks with needles, because we all come together to love wrestling. It's like, no, none of this stuff is a simulation of competition between two guys, that are telling a story physically that they began with either verbally or in some other kind of physical fashion. None of that has anything to do with this. Now, you can elevate and bring things down. You can have humor. You can have romance. You can have all these type of things. But overall, when it comes to the physicality of it, it's not real enough to actually leave damage. But it's not phony enough that the audience can see through it and mock it. All right? It's pretty obvious as far as I'm concerned. The only time Bret comes out to talk anymore is just to put himself over. It's kind of sad. Wow. I don't think that's what he's doing. He didn't mention himself at all. He just said that he wanted to make it look real. All right. I was embarrassed that Bret was embarrassed for kids slapping their legs. Seriously, it's almost like in the triple digits each week with all this damn leg slapping. Wish it would stop. Do an added incentive. If you avoid leg slaps, you get an extra $50 or it goes to charity. I'll give the United Way $50 if you stop slapping your leg, please. How about you actually start punishing these assholes for slapping their leg? Like, how about that? And I really question the business because I would expect NXT to be a lot of the basics. Headlocks, body slams, takeovers, arm drags, etc. But NXT can sometimes, even the kids who've been in the business only a year or so, they have picked up those bad indie habits where all they do is, leg slaps and big top rope flippity doodads. It's like, not a fan, dog. Not a fan. All right. So people don't like his opinions on modern wrestling. This is so weird. It's supposed to be some, but it's so me. So me people don't like his opinions on modern wrestling. Stats say that much less people watch wrestling regularly than they used to during Bret's time. The subset of the people who watch are the most vocal on Twitter, who are mostly speaking against Bret. Somebody was trying to talk, they were trying to use some data. Trying. Bret, 98% of the time, anyways, is just here to complain. Oh. Should someone tell him that everyone has been in on it for a while? With all the forms of entertainment out there, we're all going to figure out how things are done if we want to. He's just an old man complaining things aren't like they used to be, as always with Bret. I say this all the time, and I get into it with AEW fans who talk about how everybody knows how everything is fake or whatever. It's like, look, every movie has boom mics, every movie has a script, every movie is not real, but there are a lot of things that should never be on screen. You should never see the boom mic in the, so you should never see that in a movie. We know it's there. We know cameras are there. We should never see them. We know that the director is there. We should never see the director. Unless the director is a part of the movie. Is an actual actor in the movie. We should never see him. We know that people are there with snacks. We know that catering is there. We don't need to see any of that stuff. We know that, if an actor is crying because his wife left him, that his wife really didn't leave him because it's not real. But the fact of the matter is, as part of the job, you have to make it feel real. I'm sorry that this upsets you, that this bothers you, that people might actually like that idea. But if that's what wrestling is, bro, even in its silliest, there's supposed to be some level of reality to wrestling. I'll give you a good example as I search through this thing for something else to read. When you look at, let's say, a silly storyline like The Undertaker feuding over his urn. His urn was stolen by Kama Mustafa, and it was turned into a Cuban links chain. It was melted down and turned into a Cuban links chain. Now, it was, of course, the urn is the source of the Undertaker's power and all this kind of stuff. But in reality, it's just a story of a man getting his stuff stolen and he wants it back. Incredibly realistic. We can, put all the sparkles and flipping and all that stuff on it. But it's really just a story of this guy stole my stuff and I want it back. If somebody stole your stuff, you would want it back. So, that's the realism of it. Is guy stole thing from me. I want my thing back, And it's silly. It's put in a silly a silly wrapping because you have this undead zombie guy and this fake MMA fighter. But ultimately, it's a real story of a guy's property getting stolen and melted down. It's like somebody stole his car and stripped it. You know, like you can, if you ever had your car stolen and stripped, you can get how Undertaker feels when his urn was turned into a goddamn necklace. You might have some idea of how this guy felt. Here's one that makes, oh boy, that just kind of throws me for a loop. I love Bret, but that leg slapping made more money and views than he could dream of. Man knows the ring, but not the money. Are you kidding me? What? What? Bret is broke and doesn't make any money in the wrestling business. That is absurd. That is absurd. All right. There's some people who say absurd things in wrestling. That's an absurd thing to say. You know, that's, oh boy. He's going to ruin his image with such statements. What? If you know anything about Bret Hart, you know that Bret Hart ain't gonna be down for the leg slaps. It's not that he just don't like the kids. It's that he can see through it and he can see that fans are mocking it and fans aren't taking it serious. That's his problem with it. Oh boy. Now I feel bad I popped for him when I was there live. He did look kind of awkward when we saw him on the camera. You could tell he was talking about Gunther versus Sheamus, and all I see now is that Bret whining because he was too weak to take the chops, and his comments are absolute crap. No, it's that he realizes what the business is. Yes, there's going to be some realism to it. Like he says, he let Ric Flair chop him to sell the match. You got to put over that the match could have some real damage into it, and the chops give that away. But at the end of the day, he doesn't want to take 100 fucking chops and end up going to sleep hurt and beat up. That's not, you know, there's going to be some element of it to that, but that's not what he wants on a nightly basis, is to be chopped and beat up every single damn night. Does he ever shut up? Oh, God. He should never. On this week's episode of Bret Hart Hates Something. On this episode of Bret Hart Hates. That's going to be the name of the playlist. I'm letting y'all know now. This is why Goldberg is better. Oh, no. 4 out of 10. Oh, no. Leg slaps have never bothered me, and quite frankly, I never even noticed them until old heads started whining about it. To be honest, I didn't notice them and only think about their existence when I see comments like this. You can clearly hear it. I ignore it because, you know, it's one of those many things, like wrestlers being nerds now and stuff like that you don't have to mention every single time. It's just obvious. It's just like one of those permanent problems like scripted promos and scripted matches where everybody's standing around letting everything happen. It just is what it is. If you watch modern wrestling, you just have to accept it. I've been embarrassed listening to Bret Hart cry in every interview he's had since 1998. Leave Bret alone, please. He was right. He was right. That's all I can say. Here we go. Bret Hart is a hack. Oh my goodness. A hack? I don't think so. I don't think so. I can't figure out why I find him so attractive, but I do. So I'm on his side. And this is a young black woman who finds Bret Hart attractive. Well, I want to fuck him, so he's right. So I don't know. Oh boy. Like most things change. Old heads don't. Don't mean their opinions are invaluable. Just means that sometimes they're wrong. Just because things have changed doesn't mean that they're wrong. Jesus Christ, what the hell? Oh, poor little Bret. Oh, shit. Bret doesn't need your sympathy. Laughing my fucking ass off like he didn't stomp the ring when he punched people. If it's not just him stirring the pot to get attention for his merch, then he's 100% doing this because he hates super kicks in general because of Shawn and Goldberg. Maybe. Oh, God. Let me fix what he meant. I was so embarrassed to sit front row and watch everyone on the card be much better, more exciting, and more over than me. Now, wait a minute. Wait a minute. 2 out of those 3 is no good. Nobody was better than Bret. Nobody on the current roster is better than Bret Hart. All right. And they certainly aren't more over. If you haven't watched wrestling in, I don't know, last couple of years, if you haven't watched, let's say, a Superstars taping or a Raw taping when Bret's music plays and how people used to come out of their skin for Bret, you don't understand. It might have been fewer people in the audience, but those people that were there, he was over with them. All right. And he was legit. All right. Here's another one. I was there live. My first wrestling pay-per-view in a live crowd. It was incredible. I respectfully disagree with Bret Hart. He's filled with misery and sorrow, glorifying wrestling from the 90s. Sheamus versus Gunther was amazing. Myself and crowd were roaring the entire time. Okay. All right. Sure. That's a fan's perspective, as they should. As a fan, I sit in the crowd and watch all kinds of crazy stuff happen. And, you know, you get the energy from other fans, and you're like, yay, this is kind of cool. This is not bad. But on TV, you're like, ugh, what is this shit? I don't want to see this. Here's somebody else. I mean, he stomped his feet. What's the difference? You're still creating a sound effect for something that didn't make enough noise to seem believable. Well, I think we watched enough UFC or something like that, enough boxing, to know that you don't necessarily need to make a smack sound when a guy throws a punch or a kick. It's like you don't need to stomp when you throw a punch. A true evolution would be getting rid of the stomps or getting rid of the leg slaps. Or you're doing just enough to get the noise and to get over that you really are making contact here and there, but not overdoing it. And that's what he's saying, is you're overdoing it in both directions. And I don't understand why there's people who just don't get this. Bret Hart choosing to be a certified hater of a show that has Sheamus and Gunther slap the piss out of each other is amazing. Well, guess what? The thing that you liked about it is the thing that he didn't like about it. So I'm not surprised at all. He was one of my personal favorites. Shane, Bret is such a curmudgeon. Oh, that's offensive to call somebody a curmudgeon. Why did you do that? A lot of fans will hate this, but he's 100% right. Besides, logically, why would you chop someone if you can punch them? But the thing is, punches are supposed to be illegal. That's the thing about wrestling. Closed fist punches are supposed to be illegal. I know we moved away from that. But that's actually, if we're thinking of wrestling, closed fist punches are supposed to be illegal. So it's supposed to be more chops than anything. I love Bret, but is this the wrestling version of when basketball players say players today couldn't compete in the 80s and 90s? Yeah, it is, actually. It is. But the 80s and 90s basketball was far more physical, and anybody will tell you that it's true. Just watch an old basketball game. It was far more physical than basketball today. Football, too. Sports, a lot of sports have gotten a lot softer. You know, boxing, UFC, all of that stuff has gotten softer than it used to be. And pro wrestling is no different. Let's see. I'm less interested in this and more interested in the stuff he says about chops later. Looks like Bret hated the Gunther and Sheamus match. Yeah. Bret is such a cute, grumpy old man. I love him. Ooh. Yeah, my favorite part of older matches are the same 3 grapple positions and lame-ass submissions. Rather see 2 people chop each other and slap their legs on super kicks than watch that shit. We used to make it look real. Sean carrying this photo, man. Come on, old man. Shut the fuck up. Oh, God. The thing is, because a lot of those guys didn't really have too much of mixed martial arts knowledge at the time, it did lead to them a lot of people doing the same stuff, like the Tongan death grip on the trapezius muscle, or being in a headlock for a long time. And if somebody did break out a new submission hold, it was almost like a finisher. But that's what we talk about, evolution. Like, if you watched Josh Barnett's Bloodsport, I will forever say that that's what wrestling should be. With a little bit more color and a little bit more promos and storyline added to it, it should look like that. Wrestling should look like Josh Barnett's Bloodsport. That's how it should look. With a little bit more sizzle to it. Like that show is just straight up wrestling, grappling, exchanging of holds and stuff like that. That's what the business should look like. Because that's what it's called fucking wrestling. It's called wrestling. What is wrestling? You putting your hands on someone else, jostling for position. Pause. Jostling for position. No homo, right? That's what it should be. Chops, punches, they don't really factor into wrestling. We accept that as part of wrestling, and we certainly accept it now because of mixed martial arts and unified mixed martial arts rules. But wrestling should be about grappling and grabbing a hold and grabbing a position or whatever. That's really what it should be about. And I don't know. Moonsaults should just be an extra thing that we throw in there because we can do moonsaults in a way that UFC fighters and boxers cannot do moonsaults, right? Or they would not accept it, in those fields. Because of what Bret values on a technical level, he's not going to enjoy modern wrestling much unless it's like Roddy in the ring with Danielson. In fact, somebody should show him the Joe Garcia versus Danielson matches. He'd be into those. He wouldn't be into the chops, and Danielson likes to chop. Danielson likes to hit and be hit. He wouldn't like that, to be quite honest. He would say the same thing that he would say about Gunther and Sheamus. Hell, Daniel Bryan would walk out of some matches like he got into a fight with a tiger. He'd be like, why would you do this? It's not real. Don't do this to yourself. Somebody's giggling because when Randy Orton and Ciampa were beefing on here and Randy asked him what time is leg slap class at the PC. I forgot all about that. Ooh, boy. That was a good one. Oh, shit. I miss Randy Orton. Where is Randy Orton? I'm so confused. So first he rants about leg slaps, saying it makes wrestling seem fake when it's done so you don't have to do stiff to each other. And then complains people are stiffing each other too much. Like, what do you want? Literally, there's a middle ground, Oh boy. We're getting Ric Flair levels of angry old man. Wow. Bret is a legend and all, but saying what happened is silly. The internet happened, Bret. You can, quote, make it look real, but the internet knows that it isn't. It's scripted action and the people know that. It baffles me how out of touch legends in the business are sometimes. The thing is, and this is why, WWE does a good job going after the kids, is the kids still believe in it. The kids still believe that wrestling is somewhat legitimate to a degree. I have been in crowds of, where kids truly believe that wrestling is real, and for them, it's fun. It's like Santa Claus. It's like the Easter Bunny. It's like all of those little interesting things, the world a fantasy that we create for children. They still believe in wrestling. If you want to have a more physical style for a more, adult audience, Japan is a good one. But considering that adults know that it's not real, I'm okay with it being real enough for children, At the same time, though, don't do things that children would want to mimic, and can hurt themselves doing. Because I know I was one of those. I'm about to do a Randy Savage elbow drop off the top of this Chester drawer. It's about to happen, brother. Don't go to sleep around me because we doing frog splashes in this joint, You know what I'm saying? What's older wrestlers' beef with leg slapping? I think he explained it. Is that, fans are mocking it and they're slapping their thigh, laughing at this crap. Somebody says he's not even talking about the wrestlers. He's talking about the lack of kayfabe and the crowd being in on it. Well, there's an element of truth to that too. He kind of is. All right. I'm sure the indie-rific wrestlers of today will respond to Bret the way they have to us, and to tell Bret he's ignorant and should just enjoy the show or move on, right? I think Bret has kind of taken himself out of the pool by saying that he doesn't even want to watch this stuff because it's too phony. I get that. You know, somebody says this. I've said this multiple times, but it bears repeating. I aspire to obtain the same level of hater energy as Bret Hart. Wow. I don't seek to acquire that much power. I think that anybody with that much power that's just too much power for one man to have. Oh, turn it in, you old fucking bastard. You're still bitching about the Montreal screw job, yet the more I see your ridiculous words, the more I realize that they were right to do so. Wow. That's insane. I swear this man will die as a miserable human being. What the fuck? What is this guy talking about? Ooh. Let's get you to bed, Grandpa. Ooh. We got to stop giving old timers an air, man. Ooh. Wow. Yikes. Jesus. The biggest feud of all time is against the leg slapping merchants. All the leg slapping merchants. You want kids to kick each other in their faces? No. In fact, he doesn't want that, actually. He doesn't want that at all, actually. People call Bret a bitter old man, but doesn't realize he has always been this way, and it's hilarious. This is true. He's been this way for a long time. Bret Hart, the worst wrestler of all time. Dude can never shut the hell up. Wow. The worst wrestler of all time? Bret the Hitman Hart? The worst? Wow. That's untrue. This boomer again? OMD. I don't know what OMD is. Oh my damn? Oh my dog? I don't know. We owe Goldberg an apology. Oh, no, you don't. Come on. When you throw a wrestling punch, did you not used to stomp every time? Please, Bret, do not make me lose respect for you. Please don't turn into a bitter old man. I swear to God, you are at least 10 years too late in that statement. You are at the very least 10 minutes too late. 10 minutes? Did I say minutes? Years. 10 years too late. This the same motherfucker that had to retire because somebody didn't smack their leg. What the fuck is going on today? He didn't retire because somebody forgot to smack their leg. He retired because Goldberg didn't have any control of his own body and kicked Bret in the fucking face. Which, of course, happens when you're throwing your leg at somebody's face. Occasionally, that shit makes contact. The one thing you can say with his take is that it's nuanced, if somewhat dogmatic, and rooted in a specific philosophical approach to wrestling. Sure. What you said. Old wrestlers are more annoying than old NBA players. I would imagine so. Y'all messy for this. He was talking about the audience doing it. He was also talking about the boys doing it. Stop it. He was pretty clear in this. Oh, for God's sake, Bret, you literally stomped the ground when you punched. Yes, we know that. We get that he stomped when he was throwing a punch. We get that. HBK was doing it in the 90s though. Yeah, he doesn't like Shawn Michaels. You know that, right? My logic antennae always malfunction when leg slaps are brought. My dog, this is what kills your suspension of disbelief? Yes. Yes. Nobody likes leg slaps, my dude. Everybody got their own little picadillos, man. Everybody got their own little, what they call icks nowadays. Leg slapping has become a huge ick for a lot of people. And we need to, if enough of us stand up against leg slaps, then you and we can work together to ban leg slaps. We can save the thighs, okay? We can save guys' thighs. by stopping the leg slaps. If we could only get rid of forearm shivers, we need to get rid of those too because they're really bad. On other news, Goldberg recently said he loved how wrestlers today slap their leg when they wrestle. I don't think he said that. Stop lying on Bill. Bill ain't say that. When I get older, I wish I could be half as good at hating as Bret the Hate Man Hart. Jesus, what? Bret the Hate Man. For starters, that's not even original. Secondly, he doesn't hate everything. He just hates most things. And he hates things that most people should hate. It's not like he's hating something that people should like. He hates things that should be hated on. What he forgets is that he had the honor and the privilege of sitting in a crowd that included somebody. Who the hell is this person? Oh, it's themselves. This person put an act there. I thought it was like a celebrity or something, and it's just themselves. Like, oh, you had the honor and the privilege of sitting in the same crowd as me. Somebody with an anime profile on Twitter. There aren't enough hammers in the world. I don't know what to tell you. There's just not enough hammers. So the comments and the quote tweets on this are dogpiling on Bret. If it was somebody criticizing the Young Bucks for their leg slaps, who would be getting the dog pile? WWE fans are insanely toxic. What the hell does this got to do with WWE fans? Everybody is complaining about the leg slaps. And yeah, he criticized Clash at the Castle, but he criticized the show on both sides of it being both too weak and too strong. There needs to be a happy medium. That's all he's saying. God, please relax. I'm sorry, but Bret is just a bitter man-child. Nobody cares anymore, and you should feel screwed over. Very talented individual, but just shut up and enjoy the product or don't watch it. Simple. Again, you're supposed to be a zombie. I know I said this before in a different context, but the zombie wants to stop you from thinking how you want to think. You have to accept things that you don't want to accept, and you have to, join the Borg. I refuse. LMAO, the baseline talent level in Major League Wrestling, not MLW, today is so much better and higher than it was in the 80s. What a dork. I don't think you really want to go there. The athleticism is definitely higher. Guys are in much better shape than they were in the 80s, but I don't think that the quality is better. Sorry. I just don't see it. I just don't see it. Bret Hart is my favorite wrestler, but him being upset that kids along with the audience were actually enjoying themselves and having fun is some boomer ass take. No, if people in the audience know your jokes, know your routine, and know everything, how is it good? Like, how is that good? It's not fun to be made fun of. I don't know what you guys mean by that. Oh my goodness. Oh boy, let's skip that one. Who cares honestly about Bret? Those kids you're referring to had the best night of their young lives. Only time I ever hear this man talking is when he moans about something. I wouldn't talk about Bret Hart and moaning. I don't want to think about Bret Hart moaning. Stop it. Super kicks will always have that, but the idea is to not do it all match. And not every move needs the slap sounds. That's an attack. I agree. We don't always need that. It doesn't always need to happen. Man really sat through Gunther and Sheamus and said, you know what would make this better? Headlocks. It's like, no, what would make this better is actual wrestling in your wrestling. Hold, counter hold, grappling. Then you may add the chops or something like that for variation. You add the strikes to vary the move sets, and then you go back to hold, counter hold, and maybe you do some slams, some power bombs, and stuff like that. Not, hey, this match would be so much better if there was like 10-minute headlocks in it. Nobody's saying that, and you're being retarded. Don't do that. Don't do that. Here's one. Bret Hart does nothing but complain. It's peak old man yell at clouds. Book a show with no leg slaps and watch a crowd sit on their phones and pay you no mind. It's natural for y'all to be afraid of change, but it's still sad. This guy's talking to Disco Inferno, which everybody loves to disrespect. But Disco Inferno at least was a wrestler, for Christ's sake. I didn't say he was, main event, huge money draw, but fuck, at least he wrestled. He should have some idea what he's talking about. He just has some idea what he's talking about. At least me and my childhood hero feel the same way about modern wrestling. Oh, wow. My face win goes hard on the Bret inspired us, we love Bret theme. The ones who truly do are the big draws, and the others who say that he's an inspiration let him down every episode. Ha ha ha, seen that coming 100. I don't get, I read it as it was written, I'm telling you. One of the few things I agree with when it comes to Bret Hart. Everybody loved Bret and began their Bret is greater than HBK narrative when he was appearing on AEW. Everyone loved Punk when he debuted on AEW, but once they speak facts about that place, they are bitter and they don't know wrestling. LMAO, just shut up. You can't make this up. Now, him talking about AEW is about, people being bunched together for the big spots and stuff like that. Bret, you're not supposed to say the facts out loud. Yeah, you know that. With all due respect, Bret, it ain't 1993 no more. I wish it was 1993. Actually, no, I don't. I'm glad. I like the idea of having tablets and not having to deal with smelly idiots like these people online. I enjoy that. I like this. Not wrong one bit. It's cheesy as fuck. Well, yeah, that's true. Now, as I wrap this up, I want to wrap this up in a way that is actually kind of different. I'm not going to wrap it up with any kind of snarky comment. I want to wrap it up with Dante Martin, I believe, Top Flight. The young man Top Flight has suffered so many injuries. Apparently, during the recording of this video, Dante Martin probably broke his ankle at the Ring of Honor Supercard of Honor show on a spot in which he did, I believe, something off the top of a ladder and his foot got stuck underneath. I think it broke his ankle or his foot or something like that. And there's a video of it that is all over the place. And when Bret Hart says that people should stop doing these crazy spots, when, wrestling fans have saying stop doing these crazy spots, that all this stuff looks incredibly phony, none of it looks realistic, maybe we should just stop doing it. And people always yell at you that you should just shut up and move on. Things evolve, things change. And it's like, well, look at the Martin brothers. These two guys, I used to do a gimmick where I say start the clock. Like as soon as one of them comes back, I'm like start the clock until another one of them goes down. These two guys are like permanently always injured. The amount of injuries in wrestling today, I think, are probably far higher than it used to be. And a lot of it comes from wrestlers working stiff and wrestlers not being properly trained and from the style being, forcefully moved towards more physicality, which is not always wrong. It's not always a bad thing. But Bret is right in so much as you're supposed to be doing this stuff day in and day out. You're supposed to do things in matches that you can do day in and day out because wrestling used to be a live event business. Now, true that, AEW doesn't really do live events, at least not that much. So a guy can go out there and go ham on TV. This is what Sammy Guevara says, that he didn't want to do house shows because he only knows how to do one style. And that is to do flippity doodads over the top rope, and he wants to save his bumps. And I get that. I can feel what Sammy Guevara is saying, but that shouldn't even be an option. You should be able to work night in and night out without hurting yourself or your opponent. That's what the work is. The work is you do enough to get the match over, but not so much that somebody gets hurt. Yes, wrestling is not going to be completely and totally realistic. No, the old matches don't look that real, especially if you know about boxing or have any knowledge of MMA. No, they didn't look real. People didn't care that it didn't look real. They couldn't see through it and they weren't mocking it. Today, there's too many wrestling fans that are okay mocking wrestling. Either they want to mock wrestling with incredibly phony spots where there's guys doing Canadian destroyers in Walmart and all that kind of stuff. It's like, look, I'm not down with all that shit. It is It's fun, it's funny sometimes, but then you really sit down and you think about it and you're like, that's what wrestling has become. It's become either crash test dummies or stuntmen or gymnasts. It hasn't become actually wrestling. And that's all Bret is saying, is that wrestling looks too phony on one hand, and it's also too stiff on the other. They haven't found the medium. They don't know what the medium is. And it used to be one, you know? And that's really all he's trying to say. So, prayers up for Dante Martin. Hope he's all right. And hopefully he can get through it. Hopefully it's not completely broken, and he'll be back and he won't be gone for a long time. But hopefully this injury, again, forces him to change. And he actually learns a style that he can do realistically 300 times a year where he can make more money rather than being a weekend warrior or a one match a week guy, you know. But that's all, y'all. What do y'all think about Bret Hart and his comments? Like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later, man. Peace out.
Tell me what's worse than learning all that you led to believe was all horse